Humanity's facing the greatest danger ever. Our sun's fading. In 500 years, the entire solar system will be plunged into darkness and eternal cold. To save our civilization, people begin to build a huge spaceship that will accommodate the population of the whole world inside and go into deep space. In less than 400 years, the construction of the ship is finally completed. The sun is already nearing its end. It's much smaller and cooler, making the climate on Earth cold and harsh. You and the rest of the inhabitants of the planet are going on board the greatest ship in history. The boarding itself began several years ago, before the ship was even fully built. To avoid a multi-billion crowd, an electronic schedule was organized, sending invitations to those whose turn it was to board soon. Several million people could board within a month. The main rule is to travel light. You bring 2 sets of clothing, personal hygiene items, a phone, headphones, and your favorite book. You arrive to the boarding site and see a huge ark the size of a large island, twice the height of the Empire State Building. Around the ship, there's a huge city clinging to its walls. Construction workers and engineers have been living here for decades. You're standing in a long line, one of 100. Access to the ship is granted to those who have a valid ID. The ID is linked to that person's resting area. One person is given 20 square feet of space. There's a bed and a nightstand inside. Of course, there would need to be much less space if people would just lay down in sleep capsules and flew to a new planet. But no planet suitable for life has been found yet. So, the ship is going to be your home for a long time. Much of the ship's space is occupied by the engine room. Huge power generators and powerful engines will support the long-term movement of a heavy ship in outer space. At last, the boarding and settlement is over. The engines are starting. A voice is coming from the speakers throughout the ship, counting down from 10. These are your last seconds on Earth. The Ark takes off, burning down the whole area it was standing on. People look down at their receding home with sadness, but it's replaced with hope as they turn their gazes to the skies. The whole ship is divided into 200 large sections, varying in size. Each section is a country. Despite this division, the rules on the ship are the same for everyone. Generate energy, keep the peace, and help each other. The energy is produced by exercise bikes. A person pedals and generates kinetic energy that fuels the engines. This is everyone's daily duty. For at least an hour every morning, you take an exercise bike and work out, ensuring normal operation of the ship, maintaining your physical activity, and reducing stress. Then you eat and go to work. Here, just like on Earth, you pass by shops, libraries, and cinemas. The currency is unified for everyone on board. With the money you earn, you can move from your small cabin to a larger one. And of course, just like on Earth, some people easily get a lot of money, while others work 24/7 for a penny. This inequality doesn't bother you so much as it used to, though. People of the future have learned to appreciate peace and quiet, so no one risks to fight in the limited living space amidst the black void. Throughout the ship, there are nature zones. These are small botanical gardens that are grown with the help of artificial light. Plants give oxygen to the ship and help people feel more at home. Water reserves are large, but still limited. To help conserve it, people process their bodily fluids. They're collected in special tanks, filtered, carefully purified, and then sent back to the drinking and technical water vessels. Every person turns over 50% of their waste into water. Fresh water is replenished from space itself. Once every few years, the ship approaches a planet. With the help of scanners and X-rays, geologists find underground rivers or lakes. Then they send a drilling rig there, pump out the necessary amount of water, and pull it back to the ship. Unfortunately, there's nothing useful on these planets except water. Most planets don't have an atmosphere and are unsuitable for human life. People are looking for a place with ideal conditions. They're looking for the Earth's double. With the help of modern food technologies, scientists have managed to replace natural vegetables, fruits, and meat with artificial ones. Real apples or potatoes are also available, but they're rare and extremely pricey. Now, the ship's been plowing the expanses of space for several decades. People are used to their new way of life. Children are born, generations change. The kids born and raised on the Space Ark listen wide-eyed to stories of old people about how beautiful life was on Earth. But with every passing year, fewer and fewer of those who remember their home planet are left on the ship. The Ark's children are slowly coming to accept that the ship may remain their home forever, but they still continue to search. Scientists use powerful telescopes and equipment to explore space, and every day they seek potentially habitable planets. Still, nothing's nearby. The most promising worlds are thousands of light years away from the ship. Meanwhile, the peaceful spirit of the first generation of Ark dwellers is gone. People begin to break the rules, and discontent is growing. Not everyone pedals the bikes now, and power failures become more frequent. Social inequality is a burning issue. Some parts of the ship have turned into slums, while others have grown into abodes of luxury. Equipment gradually wears down, making it difficult to extract water, and most plants in nature zones wither because of the clogged ventilation systems. To save more energy, some parts of the ship are cut off from air and electrical supply. People who lived in those areas have to move to the central part of the ship. The already cramped space becomes even stuffier, and with the lack of personal space comes growing irritation. Soon, it becomes obvious there's no other way out but to create a faster-than-light engine, or FTL. It would require major refurbishments and changes to the ship's structure. The matter is up for a vote, and surprisingly, not everyone agrees. Some people don't want to take any risks and are already used to considering the ship their home. They want to use the ship's resources for global repairs. People's opinions are divided. Conflict is inevitable, and humanity risks disappearing from the universe. Resolution comes, unexpectedly, from impending danger. It turns out that the ship is heading towards a wide and unusually dense asteroid belt. The celestial bodies are packed so tight they leave hardly any space for the ship to maneuver. A collision at the current speed is inevitable. The only hope left for humanity is to go all out on building the FTL engine. The work takes months, but it's united people once more. Everyone works around the clock and only sleeps as much as they need to regain strength. While half the people help build the engine, the other half pedal the bikes to generate energy. There's once again a glitter of hope that humanity will be able to find a new world with enough space for everyone. The risks are sky high, but there's no choice. The energy is only enough for a single attempt to jump. If it fails, humankind could be stranded in outer space on a broken starship. Before the jump, people send a capsule with information about humanity into space. They upload videos, movies, music, and the entire history of humankind onto several massive hard drives. This is the only chance to leave a small footprint in the universe if they don't succeed. Everyone is ready. All power is transferred to the engine. People lie down in small capsules and put on oxygen masks. Theirs is a single desire: to wake up in a new world or not at all. No one's ready to watch the fall of humanity. Capsules are locked. People close their eyes. The engine is on. The countdown begins. 3, 2, 1, jump.
Dust storms on Mars can really go crazy. They hurtle through the red planet's southern hemisphere, especially during the summer. These storms can grow and encompass large areas of the planet, as happened in January 2022. Then, a dust storm covered almost twice the area of the United States. Could it be something like this that caused one of the robots we sent to Mars to go missing? The atmosphere and climate are harsh on Mars. It's mostly a desert with strong winds and average temperatures of minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit. It drops down to minus 220 at the poles during the winter. A lander needs to be specifically equipped and very sturdy to withstand such conditions, but researchers thought the Beagle 2 could handle the difficult trip to the Red Planet. June 3, 2003. A team of researchers got one of their pioneering robots they were about to send to space ready. It was a small and compact lander called the Beagle 2. Its mission was to touch down on Mars and search for what the world has been actively looking for decades now: life on the Red Planet. Now, the touchdown was due on December 25th, but the signal never came. The team tried to contact the spaceship, but at one point, they had to accept they wouldn't be able to reach it. Some thought the landing was too difficult and complex after all, so the lander crashed. But they couldn't find any technical errors. Others had a theory that the lander may have become entangled in its own parachute and fell down to the surface of Mars. Either way, the Beagle 2 was considered missing, until 2015, when NASA took pictures of what could be the remains of the lost lander. They weren't just smashed debris, the components actually looked to be intact. The lander's remains were lying with its solar panels partially deployed around 3 miles away from the site where it was supposed to land. Apparently, the Beagle 2 managed to land successfully, but its radio antenna got blocked. That's why researchers couldn't control it from Earth or communicate with it. But no one knows exactly why it happened. Have you heard of a face on Mars? In the 1970s, one of NASA's spaceships took the iconic images of the Martian surface that showed a face-like formation, as you can see in the upper part of the picture. If you have a rich imagination, you can easily see a nose, 2 eyes, a mouth, and an unusual hairdo. Some even thought it was a monument built on the Red Planet by another civilization. How about some other unusual things people have found on Mars, like Happy Face Crater? You can easily see why it has this nickname. Or rocks in different shapes, a pancake, Brachiosaurus, or a fish. Mars also has a waffle-shaped island on its surface. It's a 1.2-mile-wide feature you can see in the area of lava flows. It might be the result of lava pushing this formation from below. It seems astronomers have also got some images of blue dunes. It's a sea of stunning dark dunes that strong winds sculpted into long lines. They surround the planet's northern polar cap and cover a region as large as Texas. The Red Planet is usually known for its brown sandy dunes, so these ones certainly came as a surprise. In reality, though, they're not really blue. If you could visit Mars right now just to take a look, you'd see that these dunes appear brown and orange like the rest. And the picture is a false color image. Scientists often use false colors to highlight differences in something. For example, here it's the difference in depth. Also, the biggest valley on Mars is so large it could eat our Grand Canyon for breakfast. It's a fascinating system of canyons 2,500 miles long called Valles Marineris, and it's over 10 times as long as the Grand Canyon. Now, if you could stretch this Martian canyon, it would go from coast to coast of the entire United States. Since Mars doesn't have any active plate tectonics, no one knows for sure how this canyon formed. One theory says a chain of volcanoes located on the other side of Mars, the one that includes Olympus Mons, bent the crust from the opposite side of the planet. This powerful force caused cracks in the Martian crust as well as activated enormous amounts of water lying under the surface. This water then emerged and carved the rock away. The force activated glaciers too, and they possibly created new pathways in this gigantic canyon system. Volcanoes on the Martian surface could have erupted about 50,000 years ago, although the most powerful eruptions happened 2 to 3 billion years ago. But the planet doesn't have active volcanoes today. Most of the heat stored in its interior during the planet's formation has been lost. So now, Mars's outer crust is way too thick for the molten rock to reach the surface. But a long time ago, eruptions formed giant volcanoes, and these volcanoes most likely had an important role in melting ice deposits, which released floods of water onto the Martian surface. Now, Mars has a thin atmosphere with a volume of gas, mostly carbon dioxide, less than 1% of Earth's. But 4 billion years ago, it was way warmer and wetter than now. Its atmosphere must have been thicker back then, too. That's why it could create a powerful greenhouse effect and trap sunlight. Mars also has a powerful magnetic field. Similar to Earth's, it formed because of the currents of molten metals in the planet's core. But unlike our home planet, Mars lost its magnetic field after its core had cooled down. And without it, the planet didn't have any protection from the solar wind, which is a stream of charged particles flowing from the sun. The solar wind pulled away most of Mars's atmosphere in just a couple of 100 million years, give or take. This is what makes those powerful Martian dust storms even more intense. Mars has a fascinating history. Judging by the planet's glaciers, Mars has probably gone through multiple ice ages, just like Earth. A team of researchers got images of about 60,000 Martian rocks. Rocks were different in size and distributed randomly, which means they probably formed during different ice ages. Glaciers hide their own stories too. Who knows what kinds of gases, rocks, or even microbes could be trapped inside? Now, if you could get into a time machine and stop at 4 billion years ago, on Mars of course, the chances are you'd see spectacular scenes of flooding. Maybe there would even be some form of life on the planet's surface. A strong meteorite impact that formed the red planet's Gale crater could be something that triggered that mega flood. After that collision, the temperatures on the planet got insanely hot. This caused the melting of all that ice that was stored on the Martian surface at that time. The flooding was so massive, it changed the geological structure of the planet's surface. It carved out big ripples, as well as waves in the sedimentary rock. Now, speaking of water, vapor has been noticed escaping the atmosphere of Mars. Also, researchers have found some evidence of water flowing on the planet's surface. There are dark streaks in the soil. They seem to get bigger in the summer and shrink over the winter. There are numerous dried-out valleys and river channels on the planet. It's possible that liquid water once flowed there. Now, most of it could be locked up in ice caps or even hidden under the surface. More and more things hint that Mars used to be habitable. Mars is the only planet we know about where only robots live. 5 rovers make up the Martian population. Those are Perseverance, Opportunity, Spirit, Sojourner, and Curiosity. These robots are there to take pictures and samples of soil and air, and maybe even find life on the red planet. And someday, we may reunite with them on Mars. Who knows? Oh, and by the way, if you really could get into a time machine and stop at 4 billion years ago on Mars, then I'd like to buy you lunch and talk about it. My treat.
Many people would like to fly into space. Zero gravity, a stunning view of Earth from one side, and the boundlessly frightening black area from the other. Yeah, it's all cool. But don't forget that this journey can turn into a nightmare. Lack of oxygen, floating in outer space and staying in a spaceship for a long time without understanding when you can return home. This last thing happened to a Russian cosmonaut. His stay in space is one of the longest in the world. 33-year-old flight engineer Sergei Krikalev spent 311 days in zero gravity on the Mir space station. But that's not the most interesting part of this story. Sergei's long journey began on May 18, 1991. That day, he boarded a transport ship and went into space to the Mir space station. On May 20th, the docking with the station was completed. There, together with another engineer, Sergei performed his space duties. They went on spacewalks several times, did repairs, took care of the station, and conducted scientific experiments. When you have company and a lot of work, living in space is not so hard. But things got worse on the day when Sergei was supposed to return home. According to the plan, the mission should have lasted for 5 months. A new astronaut was supposed to replace the old ones. The transport ship had finally docked with the station. But on October 10th, only one astronaut returned to Earth. Sergei was left alone at the Mir station. He continued to work as the sole flight engineer of the crew. The station couldn't remain empty. They had to send someone to replace Sergei. He wasn't ready for such a long stay in space. He hadn't trained for it. But there was no choice. He couldn't just leave the station. 1 month passed. They informed Sergei that he would return home soon, but something happened that no one expected. They contacted Sergei and said he couldn't return, since the country that promised to bring him home no longer existed. During this time, a big crisis began in Russia. The cosmonaut's return was impossible, since no one had the money for it. Just imagine Sergei's condition. You are hundreds of miles from home in black outer space, completely alone, and have no idea how many days you have left to be there. The days passed slowly, weeks, then a month passed. It would have been much easier if being in space was not harmful to your health. But in conditions of zero gravity, the human body takes serious damage. First, it's a weakening of the muscles. The body doesn't receive the necessary load it needs, and the muscles are constantly in a relaxed state, leading to dystrophy. Yes, astronauts do a set of exercises every day, but this is not enough to keep the body in shape. In addition to muscles, bones begin to weaken and a person becomes weak. Even after 6 months of such a life, any astronaut needs a long time to get back into their previous shape after returning home. Also, there's a lot of radiation in space, which is dangerous for people. It comes from several sources at once. The main radiation comes from the sun. On Earth, we're protected from it, thanks to the planet's magnetic field. Almost all radiation accumulates in the upper atmosphere and doesn't reach us. This accumulation of radiation in the atmosphere is also bad for astronauts. But the worst radiation is the galactic one. It comes from distant stars and galaxies and has a powerful effect on all living things. Radiation provokes many unfavorable conditions and destroys the body at the cellular level. Now, all spaceships and the ISS are equipped with shields and coatings that reflect radiation. But still, it doesn't provide 100% protection. In space, the astronaut's immune system changes. There are no conditions under which immunity could improve. It seems that there's nothing wrong with the absence of many bacteria and microbes, but the body's defense is weakening. A person becomes more vulnerable to microbes that can be brought by another astronaut. You also have serious food restrictions. Food in tubes doesn't contain as many useful vitamins as it does in natural products. Without vitamins, the body weakens even more. And sometimes, astronauts have to go on spacewalks, which aren't easy. A spacesuit is a huge and uncomfortable outfit. It constrains your movements and puts pressure on your body. Work in space can last up to several hours. During this time, you sweat a lot. One of the suit's filters may be broken, and all the fluid released by your body can spread throughout the suit and reach your face. Your eyes may water. The drops could interfere with your vision. Thousands of dangers can await an astronaut during a mission in outer space. Imagine that you do some repairs and something goes wrong. The wrench jumps off the bolt and it flies out, for example. You try to catch it and unconsciously push off from the ship. You catch the bolt, but your body is already flying away. You have nothing to hold on to. But fortunately, you have a safety rope. Anyway, it can break off from your spacesuit because you attached it incorrectly. As soon as the rope breaks, your body changes the angle of flight. Now you're not just flying away, your body is spinning at this moment. The Earth and black space flash in your eyes. So you get it. There are definitely risks, but nothing like that happened with Sergei. All astronauts spend many hours training to be ready for any troubles. They gain good physical shape and lose it during the mission. Add to this the psychological factor. Your body weakens, you don't breathe fresh air, you can't see your friends, and you don't have the opportunity to return home. A small layer of wall separates you from the cold vacuum of space. All this causes stress, which also weakens your immunity and harms your nervous system. Fortunately, astronauts also get through serious psychological training. They can maintain self-control in the most stressful situations. But when you're alone in space for more than 6 months and don't know when you'll return, you can get seriously nervous. Fortunately, Sergei didn't panic. He performed his daily duties, trained, and of course, missed home. A month later, he received the same response. "We can't bring you back yet. The country is in a difficult situation." He felt worse every day. His strength was leaving him. He wasn't sure if he'd be able to survive. The most interesting thing is the station had a capsule developed to return to Earth. But Sergei didn't use it because no one would have served the station. Russia sold the station seats to other countries. Also, they hoped to sell Mir. This meant that Sergei had to keep the station working. Sergei's mission lasted twice as long as planned. As a result, he spent 10 months, or 311 days, in space and set a world record. During this time, he flew around the Earth about 5,000 times. Finally, he received the long-awaited message. He's coming home. Germany paid about $24 million for a ticket to the station. They were going to replace the astronaut. Krikalev got into the capsule and flew to Earth. Many people were waiting for his return down there. The cosmonaut landed, and everyone rushed to help him. He looked very thin, sweaty, and exhausted. 4 men helped him out of the capsule. They helped him stay on the ground, gave him a fur coat, and brought a bowl of broth. It seemed that such a flight would leave an imprint on his life forever. But the cosmonaut's mood was excellent. 2 years later, he went into space again and became the first Russian cosmonaut to fly on a NASA shuttle. And 2 years later, he was one of the first to live on the ISS. In 2005, he made his 6th and last flight. He went to the ISS, where he spent about 6 months, after which he returned home on the lander. After this flight, he set a world record for the total duration of stay in space at 803 days. Only 10 years later, someone managed to break that record, but that's a different story.